What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art Shack. So today I'm drawing a Hawaiian landscape. It's been a little while since I've done something like this. I've done a lot of beach scenes and a lot of mountain landscapes, but I never really combined the two within the same drawing or video. So I thought that would be a pretty neat composition. This one I did do a fairly light sketch with the intent of going over this in color, so I didn't want to have too dark of a line because it would affect the color aspect of it. So I kept the sketches pretty light, but I'll briefly describe what's going on. I have some mountains in the background that I did, and I also have a couple subsections of hills and things. And on the left side of the page, it's mostly going to be rocks, and then in the middle it's going to be more of like a beach sort of theme. And you'll see how it all comes together later on. So in this case, I'm doing more of a sunset sort of scene. So I broke out some pastels. I have a 72 set by Derwent. They're the pencil pastels, and I used a lot of shades of yellow and slightly orange shades. And the sky is going to be two shades. It's going to be yellow at the bottom, and it's going to be more blue at the top. And then I'm going to have the dividing section between those two colors be clouds. And I also have the sun in the very middle. I didn't want to really saturate the colors of the sky, mainly because I wanted it to have an impression, but I didn't want to have the viewer's eye go immediately to the sky. I really wanted to have it more centralized around the middle part of the page, and you'll see why when I get more into it here. But I'll give you a quick tip. The white pastel, sometimes it depends on the brand, but with this particular brand, it doesn't always sit on top of everything else pretty well. What I've done in the past is I've used white charcoal, and that will usually sit on top of the pastel much better, so you can really get those strong whites to show through. I remember back in my old videos, I've done a couple pastels. People were asking, how do you get the whites to show up so well? Because every time they do it, it muddies up, and charcoal is usually the remedy for that, especially for making clouds. Using that white pastel to make clouds just wasn't working, so I had to remember how to actually do that. So the white charcoal really works well. The white pastel also, it works, but if you really want to get those really potent whites, the white charcoal is really the king. Takes the cake on that one. So I actually use a blending stub quite a bit for blending out the tones and then going over them again. Because when you blend, you lose a lot of texture and the detail. So I'll usually make a form, kind of blend it out a little bit, and then go over it again to re-add some of that texture, just to kind of make it a little more potent, or just bring a little more attention to it, just to make it look a little bit more, give it a bit more definition and form, I guess you could say. Here I'm starting to work on the water partially. I remember going in and then going right back into the sky again. I want to add more clouds in, but I went for really dark colors for the water. I used a combination of a really dark blue, a really dark purple, I think a little bit of green, and I used a black, a lot of black, and then I just smoothed it across just to make a bit of texture. And I wanted to also have the reflection of the sunset in the water as well. And this is where you kind of run into some trouble, because you're trying to get like an orange or a yellow on top of that really dark blue. Sometimes doesn't really work out so well. You can always take the eraser. Pastels are erasable, but you need a good eraser to really pick it up. So that Tough Stuff mechanical eraser really works well. If you have an electric eraser, that'll work even better. So you can always use that to kind of pick it up and then reapply the different colors that you want. I believe you could also use a workable fixative, like the spray. I would do this on a test sheet first. Take an extra sheet of paper, just do like a drawing of a tree or something, or just shade on it. Put some colors down on it. Use the workable spray over it, and then I believe that'll create like a new layer like in Photoshop, and then you can go over it again and you won't have a problem. I remember doing that somewhere in the past. So give that a shot, and I'll have to see if that works for myself. I haven't done that in a while, but I'm working on the back mountains, and like I said, I'm not going to be doing too much details for them. It's mostly going to be silhouetted out because of the bright sky, that I didn't really make too bright, but it's going to be silhouetted out. So the distant mountains, I used a greenish, purpley sort of tone, and then I also used a little bit of black. I wanted to make that distant set of mountains really, really bluish in tone, so I also used a lot of blue. I wanted to make it really look like it was really far back into the background. And for the mountains that are kind of closer, mind you, these are heavily vegetated mountains. There's a lot of grass or trees all over them, so they're going to be very, very rough in texture, and there's also a lot of green on them, so you can kind of see that green coming through on these mountains that I'm drawing. And it took me a little while to get the tone correct, and to also really get it to the color that I wanted. I had to use a lot of black in these to really darken them up, and then to put the green over it was a little bit tricky, but I used a sort of like an olive green. I didn't really use like a bright emerald green. It just wouldn't fit the palette of what was going on here. When you have more of a sunset, you gotta remember that the sun, when it's the sun setting, there's a lot of yellow and orange hues that are being just blasted out all over the landscape. So you want to use more warmer tones to reflect that. Especially for the highlights, and then you can use cooler tones for the shadows. So for a lot of the grassy areas, I would use more of an olivey green, and then I'd use like a bit more of like a mustardy yellow for the accents and highlights on them, just to really kind of punch them through, make it look like a really warm scene. So I have a bit of an embankment on the side there, which I put a little bit of vegetation on, where it's another area where I used a lot of that yellow to create those nice highlights. But I have a large wave that's coming through and crashing on the sand, and that's really going to be where the center focus is going to be. So I put a lot of attention into that. Underneath the wave where it's crashing, I put a lot of dark blue in to really make a shadow, just to really help to make it look 3D and lifelike, I guess you could say. But I used a lot of the white charcoal again to really let that sit on top of the colors that are already there, so that they would really punch through, and so you can see them nice and clearly. And notice in the middle section of the wave, there's a part of the wave that isn't broken. It's coming up, walling up just before the point where it's going to fall over and crash. In that section of the wave, I put a lot of the yellow tones, because usually when the wave is just about to break, the wave gets very hollow, and the water gets very much thinner, and it'll carry the reflections of the sky, and it'll protrude through that section of the wave. So adding in a bit of green, yellow, because when the color starts mixing, you get some greens in there, a couple different colors. It's pretty cool with all the reflections that happen. So I add a lot of different blues in the bottom section of the wave, a lot of darker blues, just to kind of really show the shadow. One thing that I always had trouble with drawing the waves was really getting that volumetric feel to it, and you need quite a bit of colors, or if you're doing it in black and white, you need a lot of dark shading underneath in that core section of the wave, just to really show that it's dark there. It's a lot of material, or not much material, but a lot of water, so a lot of foam. It's going to really shadow that bottom section of the wave. So of course, adding in a lot of that shadow is going to really help with showing that it's 3D and volumetric. So I'm adding in a lot of the side vegetation and rocks, because I'm going to have a couple of the waves more coming in, and I need to kind of establish where the boundaries are of where the rocks sort of begin and the beach also begins, that dividing point there. So I'm going to have a lot of the water crashing up onto these rocks, so I really needed to establish where everything was. And so I just finished that point where I wanted everything, and I'm going in, taking a lot of the more grayish blues at this point and adding them in. So what I ended up doing for this part is I wanted to have a lot of the foam washing up on the beach, so I used a lot of the grayish blues and I put them on the page, and then used the charcoal white, the white charcoal rather, and just kind of went over it just to kind of mute it down a little bit. I also made a guideline of where I wanted the foam to end and the beach to begin. So here you can kind of see I used a lot of like a very muted oranges and tan colors for that. I also used a bit of brown for where the water's edge, where the foam meets the sand, just to kind of show that sand's really wet. And adding in a nice brown, dark brown, will do that nicely, and of course blend it out. And it helps to really bring it together. I'm adding in a bit of just an indication there's a few more waves coming in the background, not too much, but I really want the focus to be where that big wave is coming through. Alright, so the left portion of the wave I can't complete yet because I don't have any of the rocks drawn in over there, so that's what I started to do. I did that just by using the black pastel and creating in like just the outlines of it, and then I eventually used the blending stump and carried the tone where it needed to go. That way you can kind of tell where the rocks sort of differentiate, between one and the other. Because if you just shaded it in the whole shape, just pitch black, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was a bunch of rocks or if it was just one rock. This way you can kind of differentiate and tell. And then you can also add in different colors. I added in some of the white on top of that, just to kind of show that the water was on it and it was kind of shimmering. You can do that as well. You could do quite a bit of different things. But the way I did it was I just sort of made the outline of the rocks and then took that blending stuff and carried that tone back into the base of the rocks. That way it kind of had a gradient to them, and that way you can differentiate between where one rock started and the other one ended. And I also added quite a few rocks on the beach here, as you can see, just to kind of add some character to it, add some interest. It really helped to tie the whole thing together in the end. But I ended up extending the beach all the way to the bottom portion of the page, just simply because I could have added a lot of vegetation, but I'd have to make the vegetation a lot bigger and much more detailed, and I just didn't really want to get into that. I wanted to make more. I didn't want to add a lot of visual attention to that portion of the page, and I felt that adding in a lot of detailed vegetation might do that, so I opted to add in just quite a few rocks, and just to kind of keep that center focus right by where that wave is crashing in, because that's really where I wanted the focus to be. But I ended up deciding to add in one bush just to sort of show that they're there, but I didn't want to like go all out with them, so that's why I ended up doing there. And again, I use like that olivey green color, and I used the black to get some of the shadows in, and then I had a couple reds that I added into it just to kind of show some flowering sections to it, and adding in some more rocks. I had a lot more rocks inside of this side of the page, just to really sort of finish it off. I eventually added in a couple palm trees, and I added another tree on the side here, but it's mostly just rocks that I add in. I also do add in a slight embankment, as you can see I'm drawing in right now, and that is just kind of going up towards the other side. You don't really know what's going on over there, but I added in a tree over on this side, and I ended up having to add in more water because I was planning to do something a bit different on this side, but the tree took my interest that I want to add in, so I had to add in the water where I missed, but which isn't a big deal. Just you can blend pastels so easily. At least it's not like paint where you have to mix the color again. You have it all right there in the pencil, so you can easily add it in again. So here I'm adding in some palm trees, and these are really the finishing touches of the piece. I did that just by taking the black pastel and making a strong line, and then taking like a tannish color and then going along the highlighted side and really highlighting it up. And I'm adding in a much larger palm tree over on the left side of the page here, and adding in some of the palm fronds. And I did that mostly in the black pastel and made them textured like they would normally be. But then I eventually went back in with the colored and added a little bit of color to them, just to kind of show that that they obviously are green like they should be. but that's what tied it all up in the end. So I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. I will see you all later. Take care.